Hi guys, welcome to episode 53 of the Grapplers Academy. Before we get into it, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe button. If you're on Spotify, make sure you hit that follow button as well. On YouTube, drop us a comment below and do all the stuff that lets the algorithm do its magic.
Let's us grow.
Yeah.
You're going to have to follow us down a weird thread today. We started off with something super theoretical that I was thinking about over the weekend, and I messaged you about it, and we're going to kind of follow through with that thought today. So the old saying of the hammer versus the nail, and it's always like you want to be the hammer.
Yeah.
Like everyone says be the hammer, and you don't want to be... Like some days you're the hammer, some days you're the nail.
Yeah.
Is the usual saying. So basically that means you got your ass kicked in training if you're the nail. And I was thinking about it, and I think there's more elements to the saying that don't show the full picture when we're just talking about hammer and nail. I think the players can be the wood as well.
Yeah.
Because really we're putting the nail into the wood, and it's which is the hammer the jiu-jitsu or is the hammer the player, and is the technique the jiu-jitsu?
I think the more I've thought about it, because we spoke about it prior to recording, I think all parts are interchangeable, which doesn't really do much for the analogy, but I think including all parts of it, because sometimes the technique could be the nail and the play is the hammer, and your opponent is jiu-jitsu. Your opponent is the wood, so jiu-jitsu's the whole action. So hammering the nail into the wood is jiu-jitsu. And if the player, which is the hammer, gets the technique, which is the nail, and hammers it into the correct part of the wood, it's gonna go in no issue, and you're gonna pull off whatever technique you're applying. Whereas, like you said before, with wood, sometimes you hammer in the wrong place. So you could be like Buchecha trying to leg lock Gordon. He's the player. His technique didn't look bad, didn't look wrong from my perspective, but he's done it on the wrong person, so he's applied it onto the wrong piece of wood because he's gone on to somebody who knows that subject matter far more in depth than him. And then sometimes you could be the wood and your opponent is the nail, and jiu-jitsu is the hammer. Their jiu-jitsu is better than yours, so they're just basically destroying you in the round. And yeah, I think it was a good thought. I think it's a really good subject matter to go on and sort of expand on, because we've all had teammates who have used that analogy and it's a simplistic form of it.
The top and bottom of it is that nothing sounds cooler than be the hammer.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, I think it's more of an interesting thought experiment than we're probably not going to come to a definitive answer on what is jiu-jitsu when we're talking about hammers and nails. But different woods can have different hard spots, like they have knots in them and stuff like that, don't they? So we can be applying the good technique, as in the nail, to the correct player, as in like a piece of wood. But if we don't do it in the correct way or in the correct spot or at the correct time, doing it with too much force is going to break the nail.
Yeah.
We're going to hit a hard spot, we're going to hit a knot, and that's like when I'm thinking about it from the jiu-jitsu point of view, is like you've got the right technique but you're not using it in the right time. You're being too forceful with it in a place where it's not needed.
Yeah.
Too much pressure in the wrong spot. Whereas rethink your area of attack and go with the same intensity and find a space where you can apply the technique.
Yeah.
So it's about always not being too forceful in the wrong areas, being smarter about where you pick your attacks.
Definitely. You can even also use the analogy of when you're hammering in and you just do the wrong angle and the nail just bends over. Now that could be the less experienced, more athletic player who's a little bit reckless but still gets the job done. So you can get the nail halfway in, it's in far enough to do the job, but just because of the way you're applying the pressure from the hammer, the nail will start to get all bent and crooked, and it's not the most perfect looking job.
You're basically just going to jam it on until you get a neck crank.
Pretty much, yeah.
Or take a foot home with you just because you fucking snapped it off.
Yeah.
I mean, I've never seen a nail hammered this way into a piece of wood with a hammer, but I've seen plenty of jiu-jitsu, which would be a good analogy.
So
of
you've
trying
never
to
seen me put a piece of wood together, mate.
I'm thinking about the white belt, looking at the hammer, not having an understanding of whether you hit with the flathead or with the claw. And they've got the nail and they're holding the spike end towards them, and they've got the claw and they're trying to hit the claw into the spiked end and trying to nail the flat bit of the hammer into the wood.
Or even sometimes they've just got rid of the hammer and just go in hand. Why is this hurting?
Or even better, head.
Oh, yeah. Full, what was it? Mark Kerr used to do the headbutts.
There's plenty of jiu-jitsu out there that's like that as well.
Yeah.
So just make sure that you've got the hammer the right way around for a start, and you're not trying to hammer a nail into a piece of concrete.
To be fair, it's just reminded me of another analogy that I heard a while back. Actually, it was with Darren Morris and Cam was talking to them about training. So like some players will do things their way, so they used bending a metal bar as the analogy. You tell one player to bend this bar, and they're going to go sit in the corner and they're just going to go at it and at it and at it, kind of like strongman style trying to bend it. You'll get some players who'll go to another part of the room, get it over a ledge and try and use the pressure there and the levers. You'll get some players there who'll go and find the tools to bend the bar. And you get some players who'll go to the person giving the task out and be like, right, I need this and this, or have you got the tools to help me? So it just reminded me of that analogy as well, because everyone's going to have the same task, but they're all going to do it in their own way.
And that's about being able to detach yourself from the situation and look at what the most appropriate method of approaching the task is. Like some people are just overly forceful with it, and you are probably the guys on the mat that are getting told to stop using so much strength and use a little bit more technique. We've talked about this before in the past. I've been victim of it in the past, and as many people, if you're that guy, just try and listen to that message and understand that you need a technique and not just to apply that brute force. It's only going to get you a certain way. You're going to come up to a point where you're going against somebody who's stronger than you, a piece of metal that you can't just bend. Yeah. And then you're going to be up shit creek without a paddle because you've got no technique now. Whereas some 65 kilo purple belt's got a blowtorch and an angle bender and like an angle grinder and a chop saw and all this sort of stuff at the disposal, and you just got fucking brute strength.
They bring it back up in perfectly cut pieces, shaped into this beautiful piece of art, and yours just comes tied in a knot.
I know I'd rather do the construction for me. The 65 kilo purple belt with all the tools.
I guess as well with that, it'll be taking on board who's saying that to you. So if it's someone of similar experience, similar style, similar size, telling you using too much strength, I wouldn't take that message on board as much as say it was somebody who's maybe got like a 10 kilo difference in weight, bit more years and experience, they've just handed your ass to you and they're giving you some good critical feedback. So with that message as well, I'd also bear in mind who the messenger is and what their intent is with it, because sometimes it could be out of frustration. Like I've rolled with more experienced players who were smaller than me, but they had other attributes that were better than my attributes. They had a bit more speed, a bit more agility, and a bit more flexibility. And to counteract that, I had to use a bit more pressure and strength. And their criticism came back purely from frustration, as opposed to like giving an example of where I could have used less strength. Say I might have been squeezing too much on side control, which compromised my base, and they were able to re-guard or whatever, as opposed to not being able to get any of their game off because my attributes counteracted their attributes and I ended up getting the better of them as well.
Yeah, I think that's the difference between when the basic message is using too much strength But I think what most people say when they're saying that as constructive feedback is, I see that you're not using your brain enough.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing wrong with strength.
No.
It's
a skill.
Are you using it in the right time and to get the right effect out of your opponent? And if you go in with somebody you've got a massive weight advantage over, and you just sit there and squeeze them, and you're not actually trying to advance the position, or maybe they've got you under side control, and then you just bench press your way out. That's great against somebody who's got a 30 kilo, 30 kilos lighter than you. What about when you come up against the guy who's the same weight and the same level of strength as you? It's not going to work.
No.
And back to what I was saying before, if you've not developed a habit of having the technique there, you're going to encounter a problem.
Yeah.
And it's going to be really difficult for you now to try and get out of the habit of muscle memory and thought process of every time I get into this position, I'm just going to try and bench press my way out. So you're kind of regressing yourself back 6 months.
Yeah.
Just by being strong in the wrong places at the wrong times. We always talk about how good being strong is, and it's a different attitude. Being flexible is good, being quick is good, being athletic, having good cardio is good, but you've got to use it all at the right time. Like there might be somebody who's lighter than you or less experienced than you, who's got cardio for days, and they're just running around you, burning energy, doing all the wrong things, but using up a lot of energy doing it.
Yeah.
And you just sat there waiting for them to do something where they actually engage or try and make a pass or something like that. So great, you've got loads of cardio, but are you actually using it where it's needed? Flexibility is another one as well. It's like, great, you've got the right flexibility, but we're sat in open guard and I'm not engaging with you, and you berimboloing and rolling and inverting and all this sort of stuff, and we're not actually even engaged.
Yeah.
Using it at the wrong time. Let's close the distance first, come into an entanglement, and then start using it.
It's like those guard players that sit there with their ankles by their ears going, come on then, try and pass me.
Yeah.
I'm like, come and try sweep me. You've picked to play guard.
Yeah.
It's your incentive to come and get me.
Kind of like what we were just talking about in the video that will be out later on this week, the concepts of jiu-jitsu, where it's doing the right thing at the right time and controlling the space and dictating the match or dictating the role and putting the advantages in your favour, rather than just playing to your opponent's advantages.
Yeah.
If you're complaining against against somebody who's stronger than you, and you know they're stronger than you, well, what's your responsibility? Is not to let them get on top of you and just crush you.
True.
Work around that problem. You know it's a problem. Why are you getting caught with it every time?
No, definitely. And there's always a way around it. Like, people look at the big, strong players and put them on a pedestal. Oh, they're just going to squeeze, they're really good then. It's like, strip that away and find the flaws in their game and how you're going to capitalise on it.
Nobody's like a 10 in every category, are they?
No.
Like it's, when you get when you're making a character on a computer game or like FIFA or something like that, nobody's 10 on speed, 10 on shooting, 10 on free kicks. Like, all these very few players.
There's a few cheat codes you can find.
There's a couple of cheat codes you can find in jiu-jitsu as well. We've got the Asahi and Jesus t-shirts coming out at some point soon. If you want to take those cheat codes, then that's all good as well. But the reality is, like, most players, unless they're an exceptional athlete, which there are some of, nobody's a full well-rounded 10 at everything. So you've got to find out what their lower attributes are and try and expose them. Hopefully you've got attributes that counteract their weaknesses.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's not always the case. Some guys maybe like a level 7 strength, and you think you're strong, and then you're going up against a guy who's like level 9 strength.
Yeah.
If those are your two attributes and you've not got anything else, then the guy with the stronger power is going to win. So in that case, the best thing that you can do is, if you're at level 7 strength, that's a great place to be. You're probably stronger than most people. Start building that flexibility or increasing your cardio. Like, tire that guy out who's strong as fuck, make him tired, and then guess what? You've taken away 30% of his strength already just by tiring him out.
Yeah, I can't put it any better.
Yeah.
Speaking of attributes and strength, like, we both spoke after last week's podcast, I think we spoke about on the podcast as well about Don Frye interview on Joe Rogan. Like, after listening to that, I went back and watched some of his fights. Well, rewatched a few of them, and what an absolute monster he was, I've got to say. Like, but in the same light, it was quite harrowing sometimes, some of the points here in the interview of what he went through, and if he was a fighter in this present day, his retirement situation would look a lot different to what it is currently, which I think there's 2 years difference in age between him and Joe. He's living on pain medication. He's, like he said it on the podcast, the only thing keeping him going is his dog. It's like the level of sacrifice that whole generation of fighters have made, and they almost didn't plan to the future. And it's kind of like it's a really good thing to look at for people who are training now and really hitting that red line week in, week out without having that time to recover, without taking time to allow the injuries to heal, without taking care of the other attributes that's going to contribute to their health, all for the pursuit of a sport where I'd say around 1% are going to have a highly profitable, successful career in the athletes. And it's kind of like, it's great that everyone loves doing what they're doing, but don't try to avoid sacrificing your health unless you are in that top, or say 5%, that top 5% of practitioner who is in a position to make it a living.
That's why everybody should just do jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
You're not getting punched in the head as much. I think those guys like Don Frye and all those guys who, like, with the waves crashing on the beach of MMA, breaking down the door early on, made those sacrifices for everybody.
Yeah.
A lot of the guys who were doing those no-holds-barred fights with no gloves early on were just wild guys.
Yeah.
Royce Gracie's probably doesn't fall into that category in the same way. But a lot of everybody else who was doing those early days MMA, no holds barred, cage matches, no gloves, were wild guys.
Yeah.
And such is the way that they end up fighting as well.
Oh, of course.
And they take a lot of damage. And I think that those guys like Chuck Liddell is another one, great fighter, probably more technical than those guys early on because he's learned from them. And guys are learning from Chuck Liddell, and guys are learning from the guys that are fighting now. So every generation's learning off the one that came before and getting a little bit better, and definitely a lot more now. Look at the UFC and Bellator. The fighters that are coming in now, especially the young ones, have had a really managed career.
Yeah.
They've had managed amateur careers, they've had managed professional careers, and they're kind of a lot more like what boxing managers and promoters do, is building them up. Not just having those, I'm sure there are some, but how many kids now that have got aspirations of going in the UFC are doing backyard brawls like Kimbo Slice?
Oh yeah, that's like.
I'm sure there's a few, but it's like that. But those wild guys like Kimbo Slice and Jorge Masvidal is another one as well. The Diaz brothers, they're just scrappers.
Yeah.
They're just scrappers who've made a career out of going through those early days of mixed martial arts, and they've fought their way the hard way to get to the limelight. And make as much money as you can while you're there because it's a short career.
Oh yeah.
You're almost definitely going to be retired by the time you're mid-30s to 40.
Yeah, and you can't half-arse it.
No.
Like you have to ask yourself when the days get tough and you don't want to fight, is this what you want to be? Do you want to be a fighter? Like the whole Dana White speech, do you want to be a fighter?
Yep.
And if you can't answer that question with a strong yes, I think you need to evaluate either your plan, your pathway, or your prospects with it, because we can see it now at the moment as well, especially with like the journeyman fighters. They're padding other people's records for them and sustaining a lot of damage. For what? Like, I'd rather watch two talented young kids or young fighters who are gonna go somewhere, and unfortunately one of them has to lose, but it's not the end of the world and he's not sustaining unnecessary damage for a couple £100 a weekend. He's sustaining the fight for the start of a prosperous career, hopefully.
Yeah, I mean, even though there's more money in the sport now, don't get into MMA because you want to make money.
No.
Do it because you enjoy fighting. Like, that's a commitment that you're going to have to make. There's there's probably 3 different sorts of people that you'll find in an MMA room, or most combat sports for that matter. You've got the guys who are just trying it.
Yeah.
And they typically don't tend to last that long.
Mm.
You've got the hobbyists who do it, but maybe don't have any aspirations of fighting and do it for the joy of training, which you spoke about the benefits of that loads on here. And I fall into that category as well. I'm not trying to be a pro MMA fighter. Mm. And then you've got those guys that are trying to make the push.
Yeah.
They're trying to get their amateur fights in. They're trying to turn pro. They're trying to get into the UFC. And it's where do you fall into that camp? Is the risk that you're putting yourself at, because having a fight is a risk, training is a risk, is the risk that you're putting yourself at now, age 20, 15 to 25, worth it? Are you going to work hard enough to break the mould to get to the UFC? Do you have the potential to do it? Or into any of these other organisations? I look at Paddy Pimblett has been doing it on the Cage Warriors for ages, and now he's just getting his UFC contract. Don't know when his first fight is, but it's a long road.
Yeah, very long road.
Are you willing to make that commitment, and what is your setup plan afterwards? Now I know the kids that are coming through now, there's actually qualifications that they can do at college to get set up in a career in MMA with coaching and teaching, which is great. Because there's a lot of kids who fall into that category where that is the right path for them.
Yeah.
Not everybody needs to go to uni and do a law degree or whatever, for example. But you've got to think what's beyond the fighting, because the reality is, if you start at 15, you're probably going to have started training from the age of 5 if you're being serious about it. Started fighting at 16 to 25. If you're not making it, what are you doing now after that?
Yeah.
Have you set yourself up with a plan afterwards? So, good coaches should be helping their athletes think about what's next, how serious are you about doing it, and setting yourself up for the future. Don't, they're cliche saying, don't put all your eggs in one basket.
Yeah. So, there is different career paths, and I don't think there's many that have sort of been shown that different career path within the sport. But I also think, now there are a lot of good role models within the sport for not necessarily morally or ethically sort of role models, but the training commitment and the work put in to find the pathway to be a pro. One that does come to mind is I had his name in the back of my mind then, but he's left me. Manchester lad, wrestler. He's just signed for, is it Pride? Not Pride. It's going to be really annoying in this now. And whoever's listening to this is going to be like, I know who you're talking about, and they're going to be pissed at me for not knowing who it is. But yeah, his dedication to his training, he has a Khabib style lifestyle. Where he trains, doesn't really party if he does, and he's got his objective of having that strap around his waist, and I think that's the kind of example that needs to be set for future up-and-coming fighters. Whereas there are a lot, because of the old Instagram meme lifestyle now, where it's kind of won the fight, hey, go out on a bender, look at me on my story, and they want what comes along with the fame, but they're not necessarily willing to put in the work to get there or stay there. And there's a lot of them trying to live the lifestyle while trying to maintain top tier performance, as opposed to, I've got a 5 or 6 year career now where I can maintain the strap, make as much money and set myself and my family up for the future, and enjoy the fruits of my labour in my mid to late 30s onwards, as opposed to living so much in the now and potentially shortening the career because of being misguided.
Yeah, I mean, I think MMA is always going to be a bit of a victim of falling into that category just by the nature of the sport. It's not like an Olympic sport where it's about, like Olympic cycling. If you're good at cycling, you can get on the bike and do it, and you're not really putting yourself at too much risk. The sort of guys that are getting into MMA, if you're making an agreement to get in a cage and knee and punch each other in the head, you've got a bit of a wild side.
Oh yeah, of course.
Definitely. Even like the super high level technical guys, like John Jones is probably the best example.
He was the first name that comes to my mind.
Mad bastard, great world champion, amazing, probably one of the best fighters of all time, if not the best fighter of all time.
Yeah.
Still absolute lunatic, goes out, gets coked up, crashes into people in his car.
Yeah.
Then
that also begs the question of, if he didn't have all those external factors, like, how scarily good would he be?
And he's somebody who's not even been punched in the head that much, so you can't even say that it's a CTE thing with him, which it is quite often times with other people. But he is a perfect example because he's got brothers who play for the NFL.
Yeah.
And that is a much more regimented sport in terms of like the way that they do the nutrition. You've got like a very clean cut PR sort of thing for the team. You are representing the team.
Yeah.
Whereas still in MMA, like you might be representing the UFC if you do the UFC, but you are your own brand.
Yeah.
And that whole Instagram lifestyle, like you were talking about, kind of you've got to promote yourself.
Yeah.
Because ultimately the popular fighters are the ones that are going to get put on the cards.
Oh, of course.
Because the promoters want to make more money by having more people have a buy into it. But the thing that I'm saying, which I'm not disagreeing with, is don't let that get in the way of being serious about your training.
It's like another example of that could be Conor McGregor. Like, he was on top of the world, and it's quite evident that his lifestyle was his downfall. Now, again, if he didn't have those external factors, would he still be two-weight champion? Would the Khabib fight have gone a different way? Another one, Ricky Hatton. After the fight finished, he'd blow up about 3 or 4 stone, and then his fight camp and training camp would be about getting the weight off rather than having a focus of furthering his skill set.
Yeah.
I'm not taking anything from his skill set. He's a phenomenal boxer.
Yeah.
But without having to focus on getting the weight down and having to rebuild your fitness and getting back to peak shape, like Mayweather is an example of someone who lives and breathes the sport. And has he been hit? Like, he has been hit a couple of times, obviously, but he's going to be one of those fighters that comes away from the sport with minimal CTE, as well as hundreds of millions in the bank.
You see it a lot in the gym as well, don't you? Like with the training partners that you train with in the past. It's kind of like 2 camps of guys that you train with or that end up competing, or even the guys that are at the top level. You've got your John Jones McGregor type personality, and then you've got your GSP Khabib type personality that is just all about the technique, the discipline, the training. And then the other guys who've got that technique and the discipline and the training, but it's honed and timed. Yeah. And then when it's not on, it's about having a good time. I don't know which one's got more longevity. You can make an argument about which one's more exciting. Yeah. You can't argue what Conor McGregor has done for the popularity of MMA, but he's a one-off character. You see people trying to kind of emulate him as a personality, and it's not. You can just see right through it. You know, that is him straight up. Yeah. There's no bullshit. He's just a mad bastard. He's playing for the camera, playing for the popularity, and he's just being him through and through. Like, it is a character, of course, but it is his character amplified. Yeah. And I think a lot of people kind of make that mistake as well. Like, I've got to be like Conor McGregor to make it big, and you can kind of see right through. Like, I don't know. So who knows a funny one, isn't he?
Yeah, I think his personality changed more than Mackenzie Dern's accent.
That's pretty firmly Brazilian-ish. But just going back to what we were talking about originally before we went off on a bit of a tangent about coked up MMA fighters. One thing that I really don't like to see, and I really wish this wasn't a thing about MMA and combat sports in general, is like these highlight reels of people getting knocked out really badly. Like I really don't like seeing that. Because a lot,
You don't watch highlight reels of people's arms being broken.
People do. It's like...
Do people watch...
People making the highlight reels aren't the people who've ever been on the receiving end of what's in the video.
No. And... Like, I get it. It makes the sport exciting. But you're essentially glorifying trauma.
Yeah.
And again, these people have to make money, and these people make the sport what it is when they are knocking out and receiving the knockouts. But if I'm honest, I'd much rather see a really skillful technical exchange than a brutal knockout. Like, don't get me wrong, I will jump up if one catches off guard and celebrate. So that, like, Ngannou, you guaranteed knockout in any of his fights. And when one happens, I will have an outward reaction.
A Joe Rogan reaction.
Yeah. But it's not something that I'm trying to glorify or something that I'm going to go out of my way to watch.
I think it's a cool part of the sport, and it's kind of like the culmination of good technique and good timing and setting it up. I don't mind that people get knocked out, that is the sport, but like, oh, look at this dickhead, got knocked out. I think Rashad Evans was another good one as well. Like, he got that clip by that bad knockout where you can see his eyes are kind of in the back of his head.
Yeah.
And I remember seeing an interview where some dickhead fan came up to him with a photo of it. So, could you sign my picture of him knocked out? And he just basically told around and told him to fuck off.
Yeah.
That's disrespectful.
Oh,
kind of these videos that are disrespecting the knockout and making fun of people who have been knocked out is bad. The knockouts aren't bad. Like, that's part of the sport. Like, disrespecting people who are doing the sport, if they're on the receiving end of a loss, like, just shut up. Nobody who's done it or who is doing it is disrespecting people who are out there doing it. It's the people like YouTube warriors, keyboard warriors, just like, shut up, you're not done it, you don't get it.
And they're not exactly thinking about the long-term effect of what a knockout like that can do.
Yeah.
Like,
and it's also, would you say that in person to the person's face?
Yeah. And because, like, if you look at Terry Etim, like, when he got that wheel kick from Barboza, that was essentially career ending.
Yeah.
And for those of you who don't know about it, read the articles around it. Like, he went through a tough time after that fight. I think it was either that fight or around that time he went through a really tough time. And we don't see that side of the sport. It wasn't worldwide news. It was on the Liverpool Echo. So it was local news, yet he suffered that injury on the world stage. So what he went through afterwards, which can be linked, or which should be linked to that knockout, should be should be more well known. And like I said, I do enjoy a good knockout, like, especially when it comes from a really nice exchange and they've set it up perfectly. Like the Hendo knockout to Bisping, beautiful setup. And again, no one's gonna go to Bisping and troll him, because what happened recently, Bisping got trolled, didn't he? I think someone tried to mug him or something at...
This is news to me.
Yeah, he was in New Orleans.
Okay.
I think it was, and somebody come up to him, shoving a phone in his face and this, that, and I think they tried to mug him. And he just clipped him.
Good for him.
Yeah.
Good for him.
And it's like, at the end of the day, you don't know who you're approaching sometimes, or you don't know how they're going to take what you're trying to do to them.
Yeah. It's like that video of Mike Tyson getting, like, the guy's trying to take a picture of him, and Mike, he's putting his arm around Mike Tyson at a UFC event, I think, and he's kind of leaning over to him, and Mike Tyson's like trying to elbow him off.
Yeah.
And other people are pulling him off. Like, if that would have gone any further and that guy hadn't got off, you can guarantee Mike Tyson would have turned around and knocked him out.
It's like, have some respect for their personal space. Like, you watch them on TV, you don't own them. they don't owe you anything.
Yep.
They have put on a performance, you've enjoyed that performance, you might be a big fan, and if you want a picture, I'm sure if you asked politely, you'd have obliged. But if you're...
Well, they might tell you to fuck off.
Yeah, you might do,
and that's their choice.
right, yeah.
And that's their choice.
But have respect for their choices and their rights.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I wouldn't go up to a randomer and try and take a random selfie, because more often than not, you're going to get told to do one.
Wait, did he know that we're from the Grapplers Academy though?
So they might be asking us for the selfies soon.
If you walk up to somebody wearing a Grapplers Academy t-shirt and ask for a selfie, that person should be within their rights to, aside from the Grapplers Academy, yeah, of course.
I think the first person that does that, they should be a guest.
Yeah. Yeah, don't do it to him.
Yeah. I will tell you to jog on.
If you get which one of us is right, I know we're both bald bastards. If you pick which one of us is the right one and get the right selfie, we'll have you on as a guest.
On that note, I think,
done,
again, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe button, and drop us a comment below on Spotify and other streaming services. Hit that follow so you get notified. And check out this week's technique. We're going down a little bit of a wormhole on rabbit hole, whatever you want to call it, on guard passing. Starting this week on a little bit of theory and some concepts for you to get started with, and then we're going to get further into that with some techniques and different avenues for you to take.